Good morning. I'm so glad you're here today. Our topic today, obstacles. An obstacle course. They're fun, aren't they? They're so much fun. And in essence, what you're trying to do is get from point A to point B. But there's these things that get in the way that try to keep you from reaching your goal. They're obstacles. And what you have to do is embrace each challenge. And as you get through each challenge and you're victorious, you finally get to the end, you reach your destination, and it's massive victory. Yes, life is kind of like that. And we're going to learn that today through the life of David. I'm sure you've heard the story of David and Goliath before, but this time we're going to look at it from a different angle. It starts the same. It starts with this huge giant named Goliath. You see, there were two armies, the Israelites, God's army, and the Philistine army. Goliath represented the Philistine army, and he said, if somebody would come out and fight me from the Israelite army, whoever is declared the victor will be ultimately the victor of the entire battle. But the people of God were scared to pieces. Can you imagine somebody that was over 9 feet tall? Well, that was Goliath. He was enormous. He was a huge obstacle. Not only was he over 9 feet tall, but he was covered with armor, protective gear from head to toe, and had an armor bearer. Did you know that even the end of his sword, that little piece, weighed 15 pounds? Wow, it was crazy. But David wasn't afraid. As a matter of fact, he was the only one who wasn't afraid. Everyone else was scared. Nobody would fight Goliath. But when David saw him, he said, "Who is this that he comes against God? I'll fight him." He wasn't afraid at all. And do you know why? Because David had given his life to God. He trusted God. He had experiences with God. He knew God. He loved God. And God loved David too. And God wanted to bring forth the victory through David. Goliath wasn't the first obstacle that David had to face. It was his brother. His brother was so mad that David wasn't afraid of Goliath like he was. And his brother tried to engage him in an argument, but David would have nothing to do with that. He was not about to be distracted from his purpose. David's second obstacle was actually from King Saul, the king at the time. King Saul heard that David was willing to fight Goliath, but he looked at him, he said, "You're too small. You're too young. You're too inexperienced. You can't fight Goliath without using my armor." But God would not share his glory with another. Instead, David was not about to do God's plan any other way than God's way. David's focus was right through the second obstacle. David's final obstacle was Goliath. It was Goliath's words. Goliath came to him. Yes, he was huge. Yes, he was enormous and covered with armor and had an armor bearer. But listen to his words. He said to David, "Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?" And the Philistine cursed David by his gods and then told him what he's about to do to him. Well, sir, David, who only had 5 stones and a slingshot and no armor, said to him, "You come to me with a sword and a spear and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand." And then he told Goliath what God would do. David acted in faith and he fully trusted God and relied on him. So it was when the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David, that David hurried and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. And then David put his hand in his bag, and he took out a stone, and he slung it and struck the Philistine in his forehead, so that the stone went into his forehead, and he fell, Goliath, face to the earth. Boom! So David prevailed and won the victory with a sling and a stone. God gave him the victory. David overcame 3 obstacles. The first was his brother, who tried to engage him in an argument and distract him from his purpose and from his assignment. The second was Saul, the king. He wanted to dress him in armor that didn't work for David because it wasn't God's plan. David had to keep his focus. And the third obstacle was Goliath himself. He tried to intimidate him. He tried to change his thinking and bring him into fear. But David was victorious because he kept his eyes on Jesus the whole time. Boys and girls, there is a scripture in James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4 that says this: "My brothers and sisters, count it all joy when you fall into various trials," we can say obstacles, "knowing that the testing of your faith produces perseverance and patience. But let perseverance have its perfect will, that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing." So we go through obstacles, we go through difficulties so that God can build up our faith, and he can build up our character in him, and he can make us more like Jesus. And when we come on the other side, we are stronger and better because God will use obstacles to bring us victory. Have a wonderful day.